for an expert's take. We are joined by Milad Haghani. He's the Haghani, that is, a senior lecturer of the School of Civil and Environmental Engineering at University of New South Wales. Dr. Haghani, let's first talk about the concept of crowd crush. How does this differ from a surge of people or a stampede that we heard in the past? Are there nuances in the different terms?
Thank you very much for having me. And first of all, I just want to offer my condolences to all people of South Korea for this tragic event. Yes, there are absolutely important nuances about the terminologies that we use to describe these events. The media traditionally refers to these events as a stampede. And that has implications for both practice and also it has legal implications. First of all, in terms of the suitability of the term, a stampede is a term that is usually used to refer to herds of animals. So we think that it's an animalistic term. Second of all, in terms of the correct definition, in order for a crowd of animals even to be able to do a stampede, it requires for them to have open space in order to run around. Whereas in incidents such as what happened in Seoul and in several similar incidents that have in the past been described as stampede, that has not been the case. People have not even had the space to move around. But the most important thing that we think is important to talk about in terms of the language that we use to describe this is that it has implications in terms of it. In terms of the fact that it puts the blame on the people that were involved in the event, that as if they showed a kind of misbehavior or showed some sort of unruly behavior that led to the disaster. And that has been one of the reasons that has stopped us in the past from learning from these events and trying to mitigate these risks when organizing the events. So it has major implications in terms of crowd management practice. Crowd surge is also similar. It is not an animalistic term, but it also implies that the crowd has a space to move around. Whereas in this particular instance, that was not the case. We believe that in such instances, people get crushed, and the terminology crowd crush is the most important term to use.
So if we look a little deeper then into what happened in South Korea, what stands out to you as the unique or key elements that contributed to this tragedy?
In fact, there is not much that was unique to this event. It was a very tragic and highly consequential event, but in terms of the characteristics of the incident that we observed, we have seen many incidents in the past with similar characteristics, such as the Love Parade disaster in 2010 in Germany. It has similar characteristics, and many other crowd crush incidents in the past have had the same characteristics. And those are the fact that we had unrestricted entry of a huge amount of crowd, a huge demand to a restricted area that does not offer escape routes to people. And the entry was not controlled and monitored, and the density of the people was not also controlled and monitored. And that is also what happened in many of the incidents in the past, including the Love Parade disaster. So what I'm arguing is that, in fact, there is nothing much unique in terms of the causality or the nature of the incident. And it should have been avoided, given that we have observed these incidents in the past, and we should have learned from them.
So, Doctor, what should individuals do to protect themselves from such incidents? I mean, is there anything that you can do if you find yourself in the middle of such uncontrollable crowd or an imminent crush?
Okay, let me explain this with a simple example. Imagine a square of 1 meter by 1 meter, 1 square meter space. You can fit 8 to 9 people, and I've shown this in laboratory experiments in the past. You can fit easily 8 to 9 people in that square meter and pack people up. If the scale of the crowd is that much, that there is not much danger. But when we are talking about crowds of hundreds and thousands of people, when you reach that critical levels of density, the effect that it has is that it makes the crowd act like a continuous body or like a fluid. When the crowd reaches that level of critical density, no individual in the crowd is essentially in charge of their actions or their movements. That is very important. When the crowd reaches the critical density that causes instability in the crowd, no person can decide where to go or how to react. They are part of a continuous body that moves around. And in those circumstances, any moment of instability or turbulence in one place in the crowd can propagate through the crowd, and people will not be able, essentially, to stop that. So what is really troubling is that in those circumstances, when it happens, there is very little or next to nothing that people can do. Some people that are lucky and are next to the periphery of the space and can grab onto things to move vertically may do so. And we have observed that in the Love Parade disaster, people trying to move vertically and rescue themselves. But that possibility is not available to everybody. Other people within the crowd are essentially not in charge of their movement, and there is very little that they can do. In terms of sensing that this incident is about to happen, reaching that critical level of density often happens in such increments and at such a slow pace that people cannot foresee the disaster coming. People that are within the crowd gradually feel that the crowd is becoming more and more uncomfortable, but by the time that they realize that they are in trouble, it might be too late. And such crowds often do not offer people escape routes. And as a result of that, there will be not much possibility for people to rescue themselves, unfortunately.
All right, thanks so much for your time this morning. It was good to speak with you, Dr. Milad Haghani, the Senior Lecturer, School of Civil and Environmental Engineering at the University of New South Wales in Sydney.